Hey guys, Matthew, and welcome to another episode of Crafting Optimized. In today's video, we're going to be looking at amulets for spellcasters utilizing Crypt Multi. So this is going to be a little bit different than the previous amulets I've shown. So one thing is that this video is going to be two parts. There's essentially going to be the self-casting version of the craft and then the non-self-casting version, where you basically don't care about cast speed because there's a pretty big difference between the two. So I'm going to start by showcasing the actual self-casting version of the craft, and then after that, the non-self-casting. All right, so as always, we're going to be starting off with the budget version. So for the budget version of this craft, it's going to work for any plus level of skills that you want. So let's say you're a Chaos build that requires cast speed and crit multi, this is going to work. Let's say you're a cold, fire, lightning, whatever build. If you need cast speed and crit multi, this is going to work. And then if you don't need cast speed, look at the next portion of the video utilizing the timestamps. All right, so let's just say that we are, let's say, Blazing Salvo, self-cast, so we do care about cast speed, and we are playing crit version for the end game, right? So we're going to start off with a fractured +1 to whatever element that we are. So in this case, fire for Blazing Salvo. And then what we're going to do is we're going to essence spam essences of Zeal until we get crit multi. So you can actually get shrieking essences of Zeal for less than 2 chaos each, even in pretty big bulks, as you can see, not even 2 chaos. And if you're using shrieking essence of Zeal, that is going to guarantee you, I can't click it, but it's going to guarantee you, I believe, 13 to 16 cast speed versus T1, which would be deafening, which is 17 to 20. So it's not that big of a deal in terms of the cast speed. You're still getting quite a bit of value. And then you can see that if you wanted to get T2 multi or above, it's only 60 essences, which at not even 2C each, that's a pretty good deal. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to essence slam Zeal essences until we get our crit multi. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it on myself so we don't have to spend a bunch of time. All right, so let's just say I do T2. Now what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to null everything else that's on the amulet. So any other suffix and any other prefix. Now in this case, I got mana, so I would need to annul it. If I fail to annul it, I need to go back to essence spamming, right? If there was another suffix, I would also need to annul it. So let's say there was a suffix right here. I'd have to annul that. But eventually, you're going to get to the point where you have just these two suffixes and nothing else. Now, another thing that you could do is if you had one prefix, your two suffixes, and an open suffix, you could craft on suffixes cannot be changed and scour it. However, that's 2 divines, and that's a lot of essences, right? Like, that's like 200 essences. So in my opinion, I would just essence slam and then annul instead of going for that. But if you don't want to waste any time, you could do that. So once you get to the point where you have your +1 and then your cast speed and your multi, you're actually done. For the budget version of the craft, we're just going to multi-mod. So we're obviously going to put either life or energy shield based on what we want. And then the final craft is either going to be, say for example, non-channeling mana cost, if we want to make it easier on our mana cost. We could also go with prod speed, prod damage if we wanted, some better clear speed, or we could always go like area effect, area damage, which for Blazing Salvo would actually scale our shotgunning potential because it scales off of AoE, right? And this would essentially be our final craft, which would be like a 5 prop amulet, or I guess you could say like a 4.5, because this is not exactly like super good, but it's definitely not horrible either. So yeah, that would be our budget amulet. And again, if you're playing a lightning skill, same thing, cold skill, same thing. You'd get the cast speed from the essence, the multi from spamming, and then the multi-mod. Very, very simple stuff. Now, let's just say that you wanted to go for an actual, like, GG amulet with +2, and you wanted the cast speed and the multi. This is where things get a little bit expensive, because there's no other way than to actually start with the fractured +1 gems. And while a fractured +1 of, say, lightning or fire or cold is somewhere between 1 or 2 divines, depending on the base, at least currently, a +1 all is like 10 divines or something. It's way more expensive. But there's not really any other way that I can think of. And even this, you'll see that this method is really not fail-proof. But yeah, so you'd start with a +1 fractured, and then what you'll do is you are going to, once again, go to essence spam for your cast speed. And then, of course, you'll do that until you get multi as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So, all right, suffix multi, and then again you'll do the exact same thing where you either have to annul everything else off or craft on suffixes cannot be changed scour. Now if you're using deafening essences of Zeal and you're going until you get T1 multi, I would say that the 2 divine is actually probably a good deal if you need to remove a random prefix without needing to annul it. but that's kind of up to you. Now, once you get to this point where you have the cast speed and the multi, it's actually not going to be super deterministic, unfortunately. So what we're going to do is we're going to craft on the suffix cannot roll attack modifier. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go to harvest and we're going to augment for whatever +1 that we want. So if let's say we wanted +1 chaos, well, obviously we do chaos. If we wanted +1 cold, we do cold. If we wanted +1 fire, and so on, right? Now, the thing is, our suffixes are not locked, right? As you can see, there is no suffixes cannot be changed crafted here. Now, the reason for that is because the only way to do this would be to multi-mod, because we need cannot roll attack modifier. But if we multi-mod, we can't craft cannot roll attack modifier, because we'd have 3 suffixes, which would be multi-mod. And then suffixes cannot be changed would be a prefix. So the only way to guarantee that when we augment, we actually hit what we care about, which in our case would be the +1 to fire or whatever it is, right? Like, for example, you can see the fire damage to attacks as a weighting of 4,000 versus 200 for fire. The only way to do it would be to craft on the fire damage to attacks, because then we wouldn't be able to augment the actual fire damage to attacks since it would already be there, so it would guarantee +1. The problem is, if we have suffixes cannot be changed, which is the prefix, that means that we have 6 modifiers on our item. Therefore, there's nothing we can do. The only thing we can do is simply craft on cannot roll attack modifiers and then go for the augment. And there's a 1 in 3 chance that it's going to hit the cannot roll attack modifier, in which case you'd get the +1 fire and your 2 suffixes. There's a 66% chance, or 2 out of 3, that it actually hits either the cast speed or the multi, in which case one of them is going to become +1 fire, and, well, at that point, you're basically doomed. Now, what I would do at this point, if you were to actually roll the +1 and lose, like, the cast speed, I would just multi-mod this and sell it. And that's what I would do, right? So I would just multi-mod with life and some other random suffix, maybe +1 minimum charge, maybe resistances, attributes, whatever, and I would just sell it and then go again. Because it's still going to give you, +2 multi-life and then a crafted suffix, which would still be a very solid amulet. However, if you get rid of the multi, and you only keep the cast speed, I would say probably start again from scratch and go back to spamming essences, because cast speed is way less valuable than multi, and it's way less used. But eventually, because it's a 1 in 3, so it's not that bad, you will end up hitting the cannot roll attack modifier, and you'll get your second +2. Now, at this point, you've got +2, your cast speed, and your multi. There's nothing else we can do other than simply craft life or energy shield based on what we need. And then we're going to finish off with just an Exile slime for the last suffix, because again, there is no deterministic suffix that we can get whatsoever at this point in the craft, which is unfortunate. But unless you need like an aspect, like aspect of the spider or aspect of the cat or whatever, there's no other way to actually fill up the final suffix other than to simply X slime. So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, but that's because of the cast speed. The cast speed makes this way harder than it needs to be. But if you want cast speed on your build, this is the way to go. All right. So like I said, this was going to be a two section of this video, where one, I was going to talk about if you don't care about cast speed, because obviously that's going to change things a lot. All right, so if you don't care for cast speed, let's say you're playing a minor build or something like that, where cast speed is not that important, it's going to be a lot different, or a little bit different anyways. So we're still going to start for the budget version with our +1. So let's say in this case, we're playing Eye of Winter Inquisitor Minor. So what we care for is cold. So we're going to start with our Fractured Cold. And it's going to be the same sort of thing where we're going to start with essences. However, in this case, we don't care about cast speed, so we're going to actually use Essences of Scorn, which is going to guarantee us crit multi. And then what we're going to do is we're going to spam these Essences of Scorn until we get one suffix that we care for. And that could be resistances, attributes, it could be literally anything you want. So in this case, for example, I got T3 Dex, maybe I need that. So what I would need to do now is annul everything else to get my Dex and my multi, and basically nothing else, right? At this point, I'm essentially done for the budget version once again, because we're going to finish off with some multi-mod, right? We're going to do multi-mod, and then we're going to do life, life, and then we could do, for example, area of effect, area damage, or, our projectile speed, projectile damage, which is actually kind of bad for Eye of Winter, because projectile speed is kind of really bad. And then, probably just non-channeling, so that even though mine's reserve mana, it would still be quite good. Or what you could also do, let's say specifically if you're playing a minor or something like that, what you could do is actually essence spam with like literally nothing. So what you could do is go back to your essences here, and then and this would work specifically for a minor, because we actually kind of like the suffix or suffix of mind throwing speed. So we'd get the multi, then all we need is to open up one prefix slot. So like this, for example, then we actually don't care about this, and then we'll multi-mod again. But in this case, what we'll do is we'll craft on the life, and then we'll finish off the craft with the suffix mine throwing speed. So let's see. Yeah. So this would be, like this, for example, would be an amazing amulet for my league starting Eye of Winter miner build, right? So say you're paying like 1 divine or something for the base. You're probably going to need just a handful of essences because you're basically just needing to open up 1 prefix and 2 suffix slots. So maybe like 3 or 4 essences. And then the multi-mod, which is like 2 divines. So not even 4 divine for an amulet, which is very, very, very solid. All right, so that's kind of where we're at right now. Okay, now let's just say that you wanted to go a step further and you wanted to make a +2 amulet for the actual expensive version. Because we don't care about cast speed, it's going to make things a lot easier. So what we're going to do is, instead of starting with that +1 fracture that we started with before, we're actually going to start with fractured multi. And what fractured multi is going to allow us to do is to basically, go ahead and fracture this. What this is going to allow us to do is basically not need to buy the +1 fractured base, which is like 10 divines. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to essence spam, and sorry, not essence spam, alteration spam, and then what we need to do is basically alteration augment, alteration, and then whenever we don't get a prefix from the alteration, we're going to augment. All right, and we're going to do this until we get +1 all skills. Now, this on average will take around 1,800 alterations and probably about 1,000 augments. So it's definitely kind of annoying to do, but it's still significantly cheaper than the previous option of just starting with the +1 all, which the base alone is like 10 plus divines. And if you want one of the better bases, I think can go up to like 15. All right, so once we have our +1 all in this, what we're going to need to do is to regal. Now, if we regal a suffix, that's perfectly fine, because we can deterministically get rid of it by crafting the prefix, or sorry, the suffix prefixes cannot be changed, and then scouring it. This is going to keep our +1 in this. However, let's say we actually regal a prefix. Then we're actually kind of doomed because it means that we need to 50-50 annul it, and if we hit the +1 all, well, we actually need to go back to alteration spamming for it. So yeah, kind of sucks. But alterations are still quite cheap, so it's still way cheaper. So once we get to the point where we have our +1 and our multi, the cool thing now is that we don't need to take any 1 in 3 gamble or anything like that. We can do it completely deterministic because we can craft on, can have up to 3 crafting modifiers, and then prefixes cannot be changed. And then for the final prefix, we're going to craft on whatever flat damage to attacks that we want to augment the spells, if that makes sense. So let's say you wanted to go for +1 cold. What you would do is you would craft on cold damage to attacks. Now, because cold damage to attacks is locked into place with our +1 from prefixes cannot be changed, and there's no suffix open, when we augment cold, there is nothing that it can do other than give us +1 cold, and it can't touch our +1, right? So it's completely deterministic, which is awesome, because that means that we're not going to have to, do any sort of gambling to get to that point. Now, once we get to that point where we're +2, we're going to go ahead and remove our actual suffixes or crafted mods. And then we are basically just going to multi-mod. So what we'll do is we can have up to 3 crafted mods. And then, for example, if we were playing a minor build, that we could go with obviously life, and then the final suffix, which would be our trusty mine throwing speed, right? So this would work really well for minor. Now, if you're not playing a minor, if you're playing something else, you could obviously go for whatever last suffix that you want. So you could go for, say you wanted a +2 amulet for a Stormbrand build, you would finish it off with Brand Attachment Range, right? Obviously, that would be +1 Lightning instead of +1 Cold, but the rest of the amulet would be the same. But yeah, you go Brand Attachment Range. Say you are playing some build which scales off of effective chill effect using like Heat Shiver, you'd go with effective non-damaging elements. Say you are playing, I don't know, let's say you're playing some sort of build which doesn't have any hit portion to it or something like that, maybe. No, actually, that wouldn't work for cold, for multi. But yeah, maybe you can't generate frenzy charges, so you want a minimum frenzy charges. Maybe you want to be a little tankier, +1 endurance. Maybe you need attributes. It really kind of is completely up to you what you want to do with that final suffix. But the rest of the craft would stay the exact same. You would get the multi, you would alteration spam augment for the +1, then you would multi-mod, you force on your second +1 for +2, and then you would probably just finish it off with a multi-mod. because unfortunately, there's no real good way to actually get life on this. The only way, let's say if I wanted to go for perfect, what I could do at this point is, and I don't recommend this, what I could do at this point is basically craft on the suffix, prefixes cannot be changed, and essentially ashling. And if I hit a veiled suffix, what I could do is unveil it, and if I get something that I want, I could basically just keep it. So let's say, for example, I get, obviously we would craft on Valpack before we unveil. So we would go this, unveil. So if we unveil a prefix, we can unveil for life. And if we hit life, this means that we'll actually be able to do reforges for suffixes if we wanted something specifically. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can really get deterministically other than cast speed. Or, the only other thing is like chaos resistance. Everything else is completely random. So we could go with like Exile slamming until we get something good, and then crafting whatever we want. Because if we do Exile slamming, if we Exile slam something we don't want, we can always just craft on the suffix prefixes cannot be changed and scour it, and then X slam again. And we can do this like infinitely until we actually slam something that we do want. Like T1 Strength would be great, for example. But let's just say most of the time you're not going to unveil a prefix, you're going to unveil a suffix. So let me go back to this, where basically I'm going to ashling, and let's say I hit a suffix. What I would do is I would craft on a Valpact. Now Valpact is going to make it so you can't unveil this, which has a weighting of 3,000. So it's by far the highest weighting for suffix unveils. As you can see right here, it has a weighting of 3,000 versus everything else, which is like 1,000, 1,500. So we're going to unveil, and let's say we get something that we do want. So for example, let's say we want this endurance charge on kill, which is going to make us tankier during mapping. So we would do this, then we would just simply craft on life, and then we would Exalt Slam for the final suffix. And then, you know, the only difference here is that instead of having multi-mod with crafted life and crafted suffix, is that we get an unveiled suffix and then crafted life, and then we also get to Exalt Slam an actual suffix, which could be good, could be bad. Most of the time, when you unveil a prefix, well, actually not most of the time, but sometimes when you unveil a prefix, you simply won't get life. It's probably about a 50% chance that you get life, but sometimes you won't get life, which is why I'm saying that this is a little bit risky, because if you unveil and you actually hit a prefix and you don't get life, well, that's kind of going to suck. But again, you know, 50 life is not the end of the world. And then if you do unveil a prefix, you can go either for that X slam method that I was just mentioning, or actually, yeah, there's nothing else you can do other than reforging chaos if you specifically want chaos res. So that would be by basically crafting prefixes cannot be changed and then reforging chaos, right, for chaos res. And then you could do this as many times as you want, but you just need to remember that there's a 10% chance whenever you reforge that it fills up your suffixes so that you won't be able to actually craft anything else. So I would probably, yeah, see here, for example, it actually filled up my suffix, which kind of sucks because that means I don't get access to the final suffix. So I would only do this maybe a couple times to get like T2, maybe even accept T3. And then I would finish off the craft with whatever I need. So in this case, for example, with area damage, area of effect, I could probably just craft on like mind throwing speed or effective non-damaging elements or something like that. And that would essentially be how I craft a +2 amulet with either cast speed or without cast speed for spellcasters for a crit version of these amulets. So again, cast speed makes it a little bit harder than it really should be, but that's just kind of the way it is with the current state of crafting. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you learned a little something. Before I go, I do want to say a massive thank you to my supporters. So 3 Alexes, Katie, Bearded Abe, Brandon, Gustavo, Tim, Domo, Same Desu, Miss Jarl, Loophole, Mercury, Nate, Patrick, Rascor, Bert, Rocky, Solomon, the Great Master, Thomas Mass, as well as Maestro, Nailed, Ven, Bitters, and Nictarion, Noy, Xethion, Larsis, anyone else who has supported me in the past, and anyone else who has just remained anonymous. That is Matthew signing out. Until the next one, peace.